there. I know it's late and I know everybody's tired of sitting, but we're here. My name is Jeanne A, and I am an alcoholic. And my last drink was a birthday drink, my 31st birthday. And I was in the restaurant at the downtown Hilton Hotel with a coworker to have lunch. Now, I had been hiding in Al-Anon for a year because I wanted to get that rotten son of a bitch I was married to sober. So I was in Al-Anon. And this lady had listened to me talk about alcoholism for a year. But she wanted to buy me a birthday drink because I didn't have a problem. And she got to witness something that I'd done many times and thought nothing of. And I ordered just a little pony of Cavassier, brandy. Loved that stuff, just loved it. And somewhere between the top of that drink and the middle of that drink, I changed personalities in front of her, and my alter ego was nicknamed Lucretia. Because Lucretia had a poisonous mouth. And I did. I had a terrible mouth. And this lady turned out to be my Eskimo, because she had heard me talk about Al-Anon. She had heard me talk about my sponsor. And this is before cell phones. So she led me over to a bank of telephones, and I called my Al-Anon sponsor. And that Al-Anon sponsor said, "Thank God you're going to finally look at your own alcoholism." They picked me up and took me to a meeting, and it was in Central Hollywood. I raised my hand for the very first time as an alcoholic, and that was November the 9th of 1967. And I have been here since, and that is a blessing beyond blessings. It wasn't that I didn't have to go out again, I just didn't go out again. My husband was a real drunk. I mean, he was a fun drunk. He was a lot of things. And he drank for my first 3 years of sobriety, and I think that's the thing that ensured my sobriety, because I would watch a nice guy turn into a drunken a-hole, and he was one. He once took, he left the house in his house shoes and an old Hawaiian shirt, and I saw him 9 days later, and he had taken 8 people to Hawaii and had stayed at the Hawaii Hilton penthouses and just had a wonderful time, But that's the kind of drunk that I had living with me. And it was the greatest message I could possibly have. I have had so many, listening to Kelly when he started out the steps yesterday, we're all so much alike. We are all so much alike. The thing Keith was talking about, the thing that Sue was attracted to in him was his character defects. Well, that was the very thing that attracted me to my husband, were his defects. I wanted to be as outrageous as he was, and I couldn't do it unless I was drunk. And when I was drunk, I could do anything, and did. I didn't have a long drinking period. I started at 17, and my first time out with alcohol, I had my first blackout. And I did something that evening that became a pattern for me. I wound up in very compromising circumstances with my best friend's fiance. And I did that a lot. I did that a lot. You know, I know what the terrible degradation of waking up and introducing myself to somebody I'm in bed with. You know, that's where alcohol took me. That was the kind of drunk that I was. I was a bar drinker. You know, you want to drink at home? Screw that. You know, I would try it, and then I'd have to go to the bar. I mean, that's where the fun was. So that's how I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. And actually, the way I came to know anything about AA or Al-Anon was Frank and I had a routine. He was a telephonitis drunk. So when he would get to a certain point in making all of his telephone calls, I would tear the phone out of the wall. And I was busy trying to do that and got the phone away from him. And it turned out to be a friend of ours in Midland, because this was in Los Angeles. And at that point in time, Gifford was about 6 weeks sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, and he carried the message to me. He told me about Al-Anon, and he ensured me that I could let Frank drink himself to death, but I could save me in Al-Anon, and that's how I wound up there. That's how I started in this program. When I came in, my first big book, everywhere the word God appeared, it had been marked out with red pen. I mean, I went through there. I wanted nothing to do with God. I think that's why doing this 11th step is so, I mean, he's up there laughing his butt off right now. I am the poster child for all of you who don't want this God thing. I absolutely am your poster child. And I will tell you that line in the big book that says, you can choose the God of your understanding. Save me. For the first 5 years of my sobriety, nature was my higher power. When I took my 5th year cake, I said, thank you, God, and was absolutely astonished that I had said that. And that was really the beginning of the God of my understanding starting to form in my life. It's been slow. I've done it all. I have meditated on the beach in Malibu. I've chanted with all of the Buddhists. I've been to just about every church I can think of. I don't think I've missed any. And they aren't for me. Alcoholics Anonymous is still my church. It is still where I find God, where I have always found God. And I believe each and every one of us has that spark of God in us. And I think that's why we're attracted to each other. I can see people on the street and I'll have a real connection, just a momentary connection, and I'll go, oh God, I bet that young guy is going to get into lots of trouble before we get him into AA. Because there just is that feeling. It's that wonderful, wonderful feeling of kinship, absolute kinship. But I'm up here and I'm supposed to tell you about step 11. And step 11 is sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. And I had no idea. Well, when I came into this program, I had 2 prayers. One was, now I lay me down to sleep. I knew that one. And the other was, if you'll get me out of this one, I'll never do it again. That was the only one. And of course, I broke that one every time, every time. I did things that I absolutely believed that there was absolutely no hope that I would ever be forgiven. You know, my sins against me were too great. My sins against life were too great. I put myself in harm's way too many times. I tried to kill my husband a lot, but that really wasn't anything I was really ashamed of. I just, he just needed it. That's all there was to it. He was fun. Yeah, God, he was fun. He did get sober, and I'm going to let you know that before I forget it, because he used to get so angry with me because I would give my story and I'd forget that he got sober. But he did get sober 3 years after I did, and I don't know how many of you remember Clint Hodges. He's gone now, but there were Clint and his twin brother and his wife, Clint and his wife, and oh my goodness, can't remember the brother's name. Anyway, the twin brother and Frank and I rented a 44-foot CSY cruiser, and we sailed from St. Vincent Island down to Grenada. And it was called a barefoot cruise. We had more fun. But what Clint always said about Frank was, we just don't bother Frank with the steps. We just don't bother him. He was a glad hand, Charlie, and he was wonderful with newcomers. He was really great with newcomers. I'm going to take a drink of water here. The line that I'm looking at in my book right now says, "We alcoholics are undisciplined." So we let God discipline us in the simple way we have just outlined. But that is not all. There is action and more action. And this book is actually, it is a textbook. It is a textbook. It tells us exactly what we're supposed to do at night. It tells us exactly what we're supposed to do in the morning. And, I need that kind of discipline. I absolutely need it. I have, not knowing how to pray, I learned that in Alcoholics Anonymous. I learned that from all of you. I had a sponsor for many years that she could get a little out there. She did the thing of going to India and to the ashram and doing, all the stuff. And at one point, she decided that she would go to see Baba in Massachusetts, and they had on the white robes, the whole routine. And she was going to really get pure. She was going to really connect to God. And the only problem was at the end of the first day, she was trying to get a group together to sneak off and get an ice cream sundae, So we're not people that if we don't have some discipline, we can just do really strange little things. And they seem really good when we think of them, They seem like they're really a good idea. And having this thing about retiring at night, my prayer for a long time, I refused to kneel. I just refused to do that. I would stand by my bed and say a prayer, but I wouldn't kneel. And my friend Lynn back there gave me a prayer pillow. And I still use that little prayer pillow today. It's under my bed. I bring it out and I get down on my knees on that prayer pillow. And it says one day at a time on it. So, you don't know what works to make you do the things you do. And it isn't, it isn't rocket science. It really isn't rocket science. It's simple. And the more simple I can stay, the better it is. I had someone say years and years ago of keep God like a child would keep God. That's the God that's loving. Because the God I grew up with was 30 feet tall, had a flowing white beard, long white robes, and thunderbolts in each hand, and he had already told me I was going to hell, and I was 3 years old. And that's the God I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. That was the God I turned against. And the God that I have found in this program is love, you know. That's all this program asks of us, is that we must love God first. We must love God first, and then we must love our fellow man. We absolutely must love our fellow man. And I think Keith just talked about it. I didn't love me. I was the last one on my list. I absolutely hated, loathed, and despised me. More than anything in the world, I hated me. And next to that were women. Hated all women. Loved you guys. I just loved you, you know, and I was going to take care of you, and I did a bunch of that. But being able to learn how to pray, and I have found that the thing that I ask God every day is, please give me that intuitive thought and that intuitive action to go about and do your work. I'm a realtor, and I still go to work 6 and 7 days a week. I'm soon to be 77 years old, and if they get afraid to get in the car with me, I'll hire a driver, you know. Because that wonderful husband, when we got a divorce, we did a simultaneous bankruptcy divorce, and it took a whole year to get that thing done. After 31 years of marriage, I walked away with $50 and a car that I owed $4,000 on, a cat, and a few little pieces of furniture, and that was it. And I was 60 years old, and there aren't too many jobs for 60-year-old women. But I have, you know, I have survived. And that's what this book tells me I can do. I can survive anything as long as I do what the book tells me to do. I go to meetings. I still go to a Monday night meeting, a Tuesday night meeting, skip Wednesday. I have a Thursday meeting at my house with a group of ladies. We have gone through the big book, the 12 and 12, and many other things, line by line, with a 1938 dictionary. And we have torn those words apart so that we really, really understand them. I've learned so much, you know. I've got all these years, but I have learned so much. I think at night, I'm not good about doing a written 10th step at night. I will on out to that immediately. If you're not doing one, you know, it's up to your sponsor. But I do a review, and I've always asked God, once I had a God in my life that I could turn to, I asked God to reveal to me anything that I didn't know that I did today that I owe an amends for. And I have had many, many dreams come to me that I would wake up the next morning and go, oh boy, I've got to call such and such. And that's kind of the way it's worked for me. And on awakening, we think about the 24 hours ahead and consider our plans for the day. The minute my eyes open now, I say, God, please direct my thinking. I've got a very busy little mind, very, very busy. I'm not one of those people who has come to a home in life. You know, it just, that isn't me. You give me too much time sitting and the movie starts. And I mean, I have all kinds of movies that run in my head. In fact, I just shared with my cousin, who is now 29, almost 30 years sober, that I've entered that stage of life where you have to get up during the night to go to the bathroom. Well, unfortunately, that occurs around 3:30 in the morning, and then I can't go back to sleep. And I try everything. I do prayers. I do all this stuff, trying to shut the head up so I won't wake up. But the movie does start. So I've been sleep deprived for about 4 years now. I hope it gets better. I hope something changes, because I'd like not to feel like I'm always tired. But that's the way it is now. We ask God to direct our thinking, especially that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. My first sponsor kind of broke me of the self-pity. I would go and start whine, and she would go, oh, God. And, it just got to, I just couldn't stand to look at her one more time. She also had me make a commitment that the minute that I realized I was telling a lie, I had to stop mid-word, mid-sentence, mid-whatever, look the person in the eye and tell them, I'm sorry, what I just was telling you is not the truth. This is the truth. And you do that a few times, and the lies are too bloody expensive. They cost way too much. Let's see, under conditions, the self-seeking, I think that's probably, I'll take that one to the grave with me. I still have some self-seeking motives. The dishonesty is pretty much to the side. In fact, I had a contract that I did 2 days ago, 3 days ago, and I didn't check a box. When I put the little cursor thing on it, it didn't make the little X in the box. The information was in the line on the contract, but the box wasn't checked. So I had the other agent call me and say, we're not going to do the survey on this property because the box isn't checked. And that's $800 to get that survey done. And legally, he was right. Legally he was right. And I wanted to make all kinds of excuses, but I called my client up and said, I just made a mistake. I did not check that box. And so I am going to buy you a survey. And that's the kind of stuff I have to do. I made the mistake. It's up to me to correct it. I have to stand up and say I did it. And in the family I grew up in, there was absolutely nothing worse than making a mistake. The only thing worse than making a mistake was being afraid. That was not allowed. Now, I could have flame-out anger, but I could not be afraid. So I've had lots of challenges in sobriety in letting go of all those belief systems that caused me so much pain. Here we ask God for inspiration and intuitive thought or decision, and that really is what I do on a daily basis. That is what I pray for. And I have those moments. I have those moments where something will pop in my head that I can tell is not something I produced, and it had to come from a power within that I choose to call God. And, and I have learned to say thank you when it happens. Thank you. I have a friend in LA that every time she goes through a doorway, she says, thank you, God. And that's just her way to keep a conscious contact with God. Whatever works for you here, whatever works for you that works along with the program, it's okay. It's okay. It's your thing. Well, let's see. We're going along here. We usually conclude the period of meditation, and meditation for me is still to this day about a minute long. If I can quiet my head for about a minute. And now, at one point in time, when I was really doing a meditation thing, I absolutely, it was a Eastern belief system called Rosh Hashanah. And I got to the point that I could meditate for 4 solid hours in that position. Now, my knees wouldn't do that in a million years anymore, but I was able to do that. And I tell you what, it wasn't any more spiritual than the 1 minute that I do today, because the 1 minute I do today is a direct contact. Again, if you can do 4 hours of meditation and have a clear mind, I think that is fabulous. It didn't really make me closer to God. It really did. Keith touched on it again. Watching someone get sober and change, that is God at work. Watching somebody come in here who is a total mess and watch them become what they're going to be in life. And it's just amazing. It's amazing to see it. Okay. Let's see. Oh, in doing the prayer, I have found for me, because it says we may ask for ourselves, however, no, that's not it. We ask especially for freedom from self-will and are careful to make no requests for ourselves. We are careful to never pray for our own selfish ends. I think that's very important that I got that, because the prayers that I had heard before were, God, I hope it's in your plan for me that I get $1 million, because I really thought when it said that we will have freedom from financial insecurity, that I was going to get big bucks. Somewhere, sometime, I was going to get big bucks. And unfortunately, that is not what it says. It has nothing about that. The richness comes from within. It's not, if you're successful out there in the world, that's wonderful. But it's not what God is promising us. It's my belief. It's not what God's promised us. We just get to be the best we can be, nothing else. That first sponsor, one of her favorite sayings was, the best I ever get to be is human. And that's it. I can never rise above that. And you know what? That's good enough for me. Okay. Thy will be done. We are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. We become much more efficient. We do not tire so easily, for we are not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. I have to admit, I still have some of that wonderful stuff called knee-jerk anger. And I have to apologize to God on a daily basis and I know all those dirty words. I know them all. And given just the right circumstances, and they will flow. And then I have to make the amends and start over again. Someday I hope not to have F-bombs in my vocabulary. I very much hope not to have that. But for now, it's limited. It used to be fluent. So it's progress, not perfection, okay? Now, working with others. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and practice these principles in all our affairs. I will tell you that the first person that asked me to be their sponsor, I absolutely glared daggers at her and just stood staring at her, clenched my teeth and said, "They tell me I can't say no." And that's how I accepted my first sponsee. I was not really a good example of Alcoholics Anonymous. I had a lot to learn. At one point in time, I was sponsoring probably around 35 ladies, and in LA, that's very easy to do. It's very easy to do. I mean, they called and they had times to call, and I worked. So, between 6 and 7 a.m., I had 3-minute calls, and that was it. And I always tried not to have too many newcomers because you've got to go through the steps with them. And the older ones, yeah, you can do. And it's been a learning thing. And of course now, the biggest joy I have are the ladies in my life. That's the joy. That's the joy. Being able to share life with each other. Being able to watch each other go through all of the things that we have to go through. I've had wonderful things in sobriety. Getting sober in Southern California, when I got sober, I had the privilege of being a part of people like Chuck Chamberlain. I got to go to his home on Sunday afternoons, and we had a wealth, an absolute wealth of sobriety in Southern California, and I'm really grateful. And Keith talked about Paul Oliver. He was such a cute thing. He was so adorable. The last time I heard him talk, he talked about a bark park, and he compared it to Alcoholics Anonymous. And he said, you take your dog into the bark park, and here's all these dogs running around, and your dog's kind of scared. And he said, a couple of big dogs will come over, and they'll get on each side of your dog, and they'll walk him around. They'll walk him around, and then before you know it, there's your dog out there running around and playing and having a wonderful time. And that's Alcoholics Anonymous. He had such a gift of sharing the love he had for this program. And if you have not read his story in the big book, read it. Read it. It is, it's an example of you can be crazy as an effing loon and still make this program, because he was crazy behind pills and booze, and he was a doctor. So it's wonderful. Anyway, being a sponsor, one of the things that I learned very quickly is all that I have to do as a sponsor is carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous and take you through the 12 steps. I don't get you a new job. I don't care that you don't like your husband. I really don't care. As long as you aren't being the problem. Because Keith and Sue talked about it. My husband never hit me, but he would pull his hand back when I was about that far from his nose, calling him some really colorful names. And it's 1,000 wonders he never hit me, because I asked for it, and I wanted that bruise so I could show him what a rotten person he was. So you know, I've been on both sides. I've been on the Al-Anon side and I've been on the AA side. And it is alcoholism. It is totally alcoholism, no matter which side you're on. You know, the book has a lot of instructions on what to do with the various kind of people when you make your 12-step call. And I've made some 12-step calls that were in a very unsavory area of Los Angeles, you know, at 2 o'clock at night. But you always took somebody with you. You always took somebody with you, and you did what you could do, and you did your best to get them to a meeting. You know, that's what I need to do, is I need to get you to a meeting if I can. You know, when I got sober, there were no halfway houses. There were no rehab houses. They didn't exist. We had Shire's Dryer out in, I think it was in Van Nuys. And all they did there was make you drink whiskey and then take a shot of belladonna so you'd vomit. Never wanted to go there. But whatever you can do in this program to grow closer to God is the whole thing. And that's what my pathway here has been, is to grow closer to God, because I certainly had no concept when I got here. I managed to make amends with my mom because she was my antagonist. And I made those amends, and we got to be friends before she got very, very ill with Alzheimer. You know, and my daddy, I could have been standing with a smoking gun, and he wouldn't, you know, he had rose-colored glasses where I was concerned. I could do no wrong. I wrote my first check when I was 6 years old, and I signed his name, and they called, it was in a little town called Wellington. It was a little tiny town, and I wanted, you know, I wanted a magazine, and I wanted an ice cream cone. And they called Daddy, and he said, "Oh, just put it through." And I did that until I was 21, you know. I wrote a lot of checks on Daddy. So I had to learn the concept of what money is and what money is not. The lessons that are learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, it's just the lesson of life. It was the thing I knew nothing about. You know, I knew how to party and have a good time. I knew how to do that. I did a lot of different jobs. I lived all around the country, and I always thought that I belonged in New York City, and I managed to get there. And I lived in a great little apartment on 162 West 54th Street. And I just, you know, I burned the candle at both ends. And by the time I was 24 years old, I was absolutely burned out. And I went back home to Midland, Texas, and under the guise that my daddy needed me. And that's where I met my husband and married him, you know, and it was like, God had a plan for me. I just didn't know what it was. And it has been revealed to me during these 45 years and 11 months. And it's been a learning lesson. Being able to be a part of Alcoholics Anonymous, be a service. You know, sometimes service is nothing. We don't wash coffee cups anymore. You know, the first big service job I had in Alcoholics Anonymous was making 300 cups of coffee every Tuesday night. And I just, you know, I just did not want to do that. And the greatest thing that ever happened to me, it made me a part of Alcoholics Anonymous. And from there, I've done the prisons, I've done the hospitals, I've done all of that stuff. And all I can tell you is that everything that you do, you get it back tenfold. You get it back tenfold. Watching the women in the prison, there may only be one that's listening to you, and if you get that one and you see them get a look on their face like there is hope, I don't have to live this way the rest of my life, then it's worth it. It's worth it. I think that that's probably all I have to tell you. And I hope that everybody goes from here. You've had wonderful speakers. Donna was just, you're very brave. And I think each and every one of us out here has a lot of bravery in our background. I know I do. I have been very brave many times. Go from here and see who you can help. That's my goal. I want to see who I can help today. That's one of the reasons why I enjoy real estate. I'm helping people. Sometimes I want to kill them, but most of the time I enjoy it that I'm helping them do something that they want to do, that fulfills their life. And for that, it's great joy to me. So anytime I can help someone, I feel better. I love being sober, and my dentist told me I probably will get to take all of my teeth to the grave with me, and I hope that these teeth will always be sober teeth. So I hope to be able to go to my grave sober. That is my absolute goal in life. Thanks.